Here we go. He's cleaning up
What does
more of
this
Shannon's
slide
mess.
show us?
So this, here what I'm doing is I'm kind of laying out the bounds of what I mean in John's interaction window, which should make, you have a lot of numbers to go through here, and so this should give us a very easy metric for kind of determining whether we have an event before or after. So what I mean by that is when we calculate John's interaction window, if that number comes out and is positive, that means the phone interaction occurs after the end of the vehicle event. And if we calculate John's interaction window and that number becomes a negative value, then that means the phone interaction occurs before. So now we have just a convention we can use really quickly to say, is it positive or is it negative? And we can maybe spare ourselves some of the math with 1,000 numbers.
So positive means what? One more time.
Positive, John's interaction window positive means the phone lock occurs after the end of vehicle event 1162-2.
Got it. Let's go to the next slide, please. What does this slide show us?
So what I'm saying here, I'm kind of laying the foundation for why we're going to even do this. Why do we need to start doing math on these clocks? So fundamentally, the phone,
this is good.
Mr. O'Keefe's phone, and the vehicle, Ms. Reed's vehicle, they're separate clocks. And it's very unlikely that they're going to be aligned perfectly in time. Right? If I compared my watch to your watch, it would probably be off. And that's the same case for any two independent clock sources. So Aperture, in their collective reports, propose a number of different ways in which that can be corrected. So I'm going to go through all of those ways that Aperture has proposed and show if we align the clocks based on how they laid out, does John's interaction window stay positive or does it ever become negative? Where does it end up when we run all those analyses? Or another way to put it is, does the phone interaction always occur after the end of the vehicle event?
And what did you determine?
Based on the initial reports,
yes,
the phone interaction always occurs after the end of the vehicle event.
Did all of the information that's on this slide come from the same source or multiple sources, meaning Mr. Burgess and Dr. Welcher?
In the PowerPoint as a whole, all the information comes from the Aperture reports collectively.
Okay.
From Dr. Welcher and Mr. Burgess.
Did Mr. Burgess make any adjustments from his original report to his subsequent report in May of 2025?
Yes.
Let's go to slide 6, please. Tell me about this slide.
Yeah, so this is the first adjustment we're going to talk about that was, and this one comes from Mr. Burgess's original report. And to summarize this adjustment, this is a key on timing adjustment, and we're going to show that the
ignition
key
start
on, the actual turning of the vehicle on, occurs about 3 seconds before that time gets registered in the infotainment. So the time we see is basically stale by 3 seconds.
They talked about this on Cross too.
We're all familiar
It's about
with
3 seconds.
computers turn on. When you say key on, do you mean a physical key, or could it be the push button to turn the car on?
In this case, it's a button. I refer to key on because generally that event is considered the key on in vehicle parlance, regardless of whether there's a physical key or it's a push button.
So those 3 seconds mean what? What's the difference between pushing that button and the 3 seconds later that you just described?
It means that when we're trying to use the timestamps that were recovered from the infotainment system that show when the vehicle was keyed on or turned on, that the vehicle was actually or likely turned on 3 seconds before that.
Do you know where the 3-second conclusion came from in Mr. Burgess's report?
That came from the testing that Aperture conducted with the Exemplar Lexus that they purchased.
Was there anything in the report that indicated testing, this type of exact testing on Ms. Reed's actual Lexus?
No.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not all Lexuses, at least of this make and model and year, would have the exact same 3-second delay? Or could that be different?
It could be different in their testing. In their testing, they only tested one exemplar vehicle. So I think there was a solid foundation that the exemplar that was used exhibited this 3-second delay. It was a very close match in terms of part numbers and software versions to Ms. Reed's Lexus. But without any kind of testing of, let's say, a second vehicle, a second exemplar, we wouldn't know, we wouldn't have any basis to say it must be 3. We could test a second vehicle and it could be 5. So we say, well, there's a delay, but it varies vehicle to vehicle.
Interesting.
They could have tested a second vehicle and found it's also 3, and then you start to build some confidence that maybe it is 3 across every vehicle. But with only testing one and not testing the subject vehicle, it is difficult to say with absolute certainty it would be 3 seconds.
What is your opinion about best practices with regard to trying to create this gap for purposes of coming to an opinion or an analysis?
So because we don't know whether or not this specifically would apply to Ms. Reed's vehicle, the best way to conduct that analysis would be to do the entire thing with the key switch adjustment
vehicle?
at 3 seconds.
Oh,
because if
okay.
we're going to use a value, 3 is the most reasonable one because that's the one shown in testing. But
Right.
we should also do the entire analysis without it in case we feel that that's the most appropriate. So, in fact, that's what I do and will show is I ran the analysis
Very
both
easy to
ways,
understand.
with and without, to be as conservative as possible.
Did your review of Mr. Burgess's report indicate that he ran the analysis both ways?
He did not.
Let's go to slide 7. What are we looking at here?
This is an excerpt from Mr. Burgess's original report, his page 28 and his page, there's a screenshot also from his page 30 at the bottom. And this is where he states in that report that when they were doing the testing with the exemplar, they observed across 4 different key-on cycles this 3-second difference. So what I mean by that is they had a video camera in the car that had a timer on it. And so in the video, you can see the button pressed. So in their testing, for example, they pressed the button at 21:48:05, and that's sort of nailed down. When they went back and downloaded the data from the infotainment, the key-on was logged in the infotainment as 21:48:08. So there's the 3 seconds. That's where they're getting that from, and that's what he states highlighted in red there. It's a little hard to read, but it basically says the average across 4 runs was 3 seconds.
The 3-second delay, was that actually in his report?
This is the only point in the report it's mentioned.
I guess what I'm asking, it was an inartful question. The portion to the left, is that his report or your report?
That is his report. Everything on the left-hand side of this slide comes from Mr. Burgess's report.
So the 3-second delay was noted in his report.
It was noted.
Did he apply the 3 seconds in his analysis?
He did not.
Dang.
Did he indicate in his report why he ignored that 3-second delay?
He did not.
Sustained as to that question.
I'll rephrase it.
Strike the answer.
Did he indicate in his report the reason that he did not apply the 3-second correction?
He did not.
Dang.
When you do apply the 3-second
Garbage.
correction, what do you come up with as it relates to the 26 seconds from the end of the recording?
So the positive 26-second window, if we only apply the 3-second key on, grows to positive 29 seconds.
If you applied the same 3 seconds to the trigger event time, now what does the gap?
That gap would grow to a positive 34 seconds.
Between the trigger event and what?
The phone lock.
In
Yikes.
your opinion, was it best practice to not account for that 3-second delay between the on switch and the data coming on?
Sustained, ask it differently.
What, in your opinion, would be the best practice in terms of this 3 seconds that was noted in the exemplar vehicle?
That's a
The
great
best practice
question.
would be to run the analysis with that adjustment included and without that adjustment included. Because like I stated, without testing of an additional vehicle, we really don't know if the 3 seconds is just a specific behavior of that exemplar or if it's representative of all Lexuses of this type.
Let's go to slide 8, please. Tell us what we're looking at in this slide.
So now we're going to get into the next
This is
adjustment.
so interesting.
That first adjustment we just talked about was really a vehicle-to-vehicle adjustment. We haven't talked about the phone yet. We're going to get into the phone now and talk about aligning that. But we had to get through the internal adjustment that has to get done first. Now we're going to look on the subsequent slides here at all of the different ways the aperture reports compared the vehicle to Mr. O'Keefe's phone.
Is there any additional adjustment that you believe should be made?
Great question.
The aperture reports lay out 2 methodologies for adjusting. There is a methodology based on phone calls, and there's a methodology based on the 3-point term
And where did you get that information from?
the aperture reports.
In Mr. Burgess's original report on differentiating, the January report, which did he use to determine his determination of the clock skew?
In his initial January report, he never actually takes the calculation to the end by applying the differences in times
True.
to the calculated time for 1162-2, but he does do the math, which I'll show, for the differences on these phone calls.
Got to
In
update
terms
it.
of Dr. Welcher's report, did he identify a GPS point of 154 at all?
Yes.
How did he describe that GPS data point?
He describes in his initial PowerPoint slides as .154 aligning with the end of vehicle event 1162-1, talking about a different event now. This is the 3-point turn event. So he uses that as an anchor point.
And that anchor point, you said, was the end of the text stream event, or the end of the recording of that text stream event.
Correct. The aperture reports consistently reference everything from the end of the events.
Let's go to slide 9, please. What are we looking at here?
On the left is an excerpt of page 33 from Mr. Burgess's initial report. And what he shows here is he has identified 7 call logs that exist both
He's
in the
breaking this
infotainment
down.
from Ms. Reed's Lexus and in Mr. O'Keefe's phone. He puts them in a table form. Then he actually goes on and calculates the difference between those 2 times. So that's what I meant by he sort of does the math. He makes my job a little easier, and the numbers are already there.
Made my job
He
easier.
just never applies these to any of the times. So that's where I step in
funny.
and say, if I take that 3rd column that he lays out, those are in seconds. If I apply those seconds, that adjustment to 12:31:43, where do we end up with John's interaction window in those times?
What did you conclude in terms of finishing the work?
Sure. I did all of them. And so I highlight on this particular slide, I just highlighted the very first one he has in here. In that case, he identified that Mr. O'Keefe's phone was 2 seconds slow relative to the infotainment system.
How?
So if we apply only that adjustment, then John's interaction window becomes positive 28 seconds.
Did Mr. Burgess apply
Wow.
all of the potential offsets?
He
No.
didn't apply any of the offsets. He calculated all of them, but he didn't apply any of them.
Did you ultimately apply all of the offsets?
Yes, I did.
And what did you?
Imagine somebody He said he calculated them. He didn't apply it. Imagine somebody sells you a car and they're like, hey, I'm going to sell you this car. It's $20. It's cheap. Don't worry about it. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. Okay. But by the way, it's I haven't driven it yet. I don't know if it even has a gas tank. I don't know if there's wheels there. But hey, here's the car for you. This man did all these calculations, did all this work, tried to sell us on this idea that this thing is fully functional, and he didn't apply these variables. Like, what are we doing here, man? 28 seconds? This interaction window?
Regardless of which offset you apply, John's interaction window remains
Except that car cost him
positive.
$400,000.
The number changes, but it remains positive.
Let's take a look at those one at a time if we can. Let's have the next slide.
Jesus, man.
So on this slide, I just took the other end of the spectrum. There's a large range in values in this table. He doesn't actually, Mr. Burgess doesn't show the sign conventions on here, but actually—
What do you mean sign conventions?
Sign conventions, he doesn't show when he calculates the difference whether it's positive or negative. All the numbers in the table don't have a sign, don't have a plus or minus in front of them, but there's an implication. Some of them are plus, some of them are minus. So the first one that we just looked at showed we had 2 seconds slow. There's another value in here that's on the other end of that. It shows that Mr. O'Keefe's phone is 21 seconds fast now relative to the infotainment. So that's the largest value in the table we could take that would bring John's interaction window down now. And so if we apply just that adjustment, John's interaction window becomes a positive 5.
Take a look at slide 11, if we could, please. What are we looking at here?
So I've shifted now from the phone calls, and now we're going to talk about the 3-point turn alignment. And the 3-point turn alignment is first presented in Dr. Welcher's slide from his presentation here. And in this, he doesn't say it explicitly, but he provides some math on the screen, which is a little hard to read. But he puts some math on the screen that shows he's aligning this 0.154 from Mr. O'Keefe's phone to the end of event 1162-1. This is the prior event. This is a 3-point turn. And so he aligns, he says this is basically how you align it, and he doesn't do the math. Again, he lays out that he says a 19.2 second difference. I actually just adjusted that to 20, which is the most conservative way to interpret that. I don't think we have the accuracy here to talk about tenths of a second. Nevertheless, I just rounded that up to 20, and when we apply that 20 seconds to our event 1162-2, then John's interaction window becomes positive 6. That's just applying this. We're not combining anything. We're just applying the difference shown in this slide.
And that positive interaction window, is that calculated based on information directly from Dr. Welcher's report?
Yes.
Let's go to slide 12.
Messed up the data. Messed up the
What are we
data.
looking at here? What is this table?
This is a table I made. We've talked about a lot of different approaches to how these clocks can be aligned and a lot of different variables. So I tried to summarize them in one table, put them all together, because some of them we can combine. We can combine the key on with either a phone call or a 3-point turn, but we can't combine, for example, a 3-point turn and a phone call. That's not valid. So I put all the possible combinations, all of them, with, without key switch, phone calls, and 0.154 on one table, and I calculated John's interaction window for all valid combinations from the aperture reports. And when we do that, the result is that regardless of what adjustment we make, all of the numbers are positive, meaning regardless of what adjustment we make, the phone lock event always occurs after the end of event 1162-2.
Did Mr. Burgess, in your review of his report, in January of 2025, did he ever undertake all possible offset calculations?
No.
In his May
Come on, man.
2025 report, did he undertake all possible offset calculations?
No.
Nope, of course not.
What is your opinion in terms of best practices regarding calculations of this sort?
I think if there's sufficient data, if there's testing or research or literature that in a specific case supports there is a best path or a best method, then we should use that. In this case, I don't think there is a best practice. There isn't any literature I'm aware of that would specify exactly the best path to align all of these. So in the absence of any external data to support one path, the most valid approach is look at all of them as a whole and then draw the conclusion from the totality of that data, rather than cherry picking a single point.
Can you testify to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty whether all potential offsets that were described in Aperture's original report, January of 2025, result in a positive interaction window?
Yes.
And what is that opinion?
Regardless of what adjustment or combination of adjustments we make from the original reports, John's interaction window remains positive.
Does the positive interaction
Which
window
means it occurred
mean
after.
the lock event occurred after or before
After.
the text stream event?
It means the lock event occurs after the end of the text stream event, 1162-2.
This man is an excellent teacher. You can tell because I can understand in real time. That's how you know he's good.
You've already indicated that you received a second report, May of 2025, correct?
That's correct.